and welcome to another Annex Artist Chat. I am Cristin here at the Annex, located in New London, 140 State Street. Today we are talking to Rebecca Fowke. Hi.
Hello.
Do you describe yourself as like visual artist? Like what's your hi, I'm Rebecca, I'm a blah 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 artist.
Okay, so right now, because I think I'm so new at no, I wouldn't say I'm so new at art, but I'm still struggling. Emerging artist, thank you. How would I describe myself as an artist? I think I say my name is Rebecca Leslie Fowke and I'm a creative.
You're a creative.
I'm a creative.
Yeah.
I'm a or expresser. Yeah, that's kind of
what kind of materials have you been working with so far?
I like to work with found things.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot. And so I think about like growing up, my brother and I would play and we would play with just like random objects. So I try to keep it at just random objects, especially because I'm building a lot of confidence.
Right.
So right now I use a lot of canvas. Canvas is fun. It's already kind of spoiled, so I don't feel so intimidated to work on it.
Drop cloth,
wood, anything that can get
ropes. I've seen like ropes and wood from like the scope of wood is like distressed wood, found wood. So that could be like wood in any sort of like condition.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then are you using like charcoal, paint, acrylic? Like what's your sort of like media of choice?
So again, I use anything. I kind of approach it like I'm a kid playing with materials. If I need yellow and I only have like oil yellow, I'll just use oil. So I think with most of my pieces, I end up using maybe like 2 to 3 mediums.
So
I'm not strict yet.
A good question for that is like, when you began your art journey, was it really like what? How did you like, I guess, accumulate the tools, right? So it's like you went out, did you like just start buying art materials, or was it like gifted to you? How did you kind of like come upon it?
So after my freshman year of college, I was going to school to be like a midwife, or I thought I was going to be a midwife. And I think the summer of it, I like dropped out of college. And I moved into my friend's place. And what happened was my friend's family were like early birds. So they would go to bed around like 8 or 9, really early. And they would wake up at like 5 a.m. It was crazy.
Yikes.
And so they had a cat. And so I would kind of just stay up watching TV. And I think they had like acrylic and a few oils. I started painting in that manner. So all summer long, I nearly joined the Navy. I kind of had like the worst fun summer I've ever had. And it was just kind of eclectic. So I just kind of I would paint every evening. And by the time I was ready to move out, it was like my birthday. And her mom gifted me a painting set. And she was just like,
oh, wow.
She gifted it to me. I was like, oh, thank you. I'm like, what is this for?
Yeah.
I'm moving into an apartment. I could use some players. I could use
right.
A couple of things I could use.
Little did you know.
Little did I know I was painting all summer long. And so she was just like, you paint a lot. So you might use this. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I remember grabbing it and I was just like, oh, I'm a painter now. And, I was very confident about it. And then it so happened, I think like the same week I went to work and my boss at the time, Tara, Tumbleweeds, shout out, had been gifted a ton of paint supplies. And so she was like, pick through whatever you want.
Yeah. So it was kind of serendipitous. It was sort of like meant to happen, right?
Yeah.
Are you, so I guess like, let's take it back to what brought you. Have you always like, as a kid, were you interested in art, or do you think it was kind of something that like what do you consider as like, what exposed you to art?
So I grew up like, we would kind of move around a lot. So we would live between like a village, a house, because I grew up in Zimbabwe and South Africa, and we moved around a lot. We didn't have toys. We didn't have any of that. So I think my version of creativity that I didn't recognize until probably a little bit more recently was my brother and I would play origami, or we would make meals with like mud and the vegetables. And I remember like when I was in boarding school, tracing was a big thing.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a little, just like, little, like it was
little seeds planted throughout
everywhere. But it was just, I was around creative people, so I didn't think about it. It was just kind of like a daily, like, I'm around a bunch of creative people.
Right.
My mom and dad sang quite a bit, so I remember I thought I was really good at singing. So I would sing a lot, and I would do all sorts of things. But I didn't really consciously think about it because everybody around me was so naturally creative. I remember my brother throughout high school, before I started, painting or anything creative seriously, he would sing all the time. And I remember he like sucked at one moment and then he got really, really good.
Yeah.
It was just like I was around creative people, but I didn't really think about it as anything but a trait, I guess.
Gotcha.
Or just like, a thing that was just in my life.
It was just sort of something that everybody did.
Everybody does it. And then everybody does something a lot more serious.
Right. Just it was like a second, like this is just something we do. It's more hobby. It's like really define like all these little hobbies.
Yeah. If I'm with my family, there's something creative happening.
Gotcha.
It's not out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
Right. Or
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you consider yourself like just like defined as an artist now? Like has that developed for you at all? Or do you still kind of feel like it's like how has that role of being an artist? Because I would say for sure you're 100% an artist.
Yeah.
You currently an artist resident at the Hygienic here in New London, which is, pretty esteemed. I feel like a great experience for those that take advantage of it.
Yeah.
You're also working with a pretty successful artist as well in their studio. So you got to own that, right?
I do, but I feel like maybe it's my personality, but I love people, and I love to like, if somebody's in a position, I like to make them feel really awesome about it, especially if I feel like it's very authentic of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so if anything, I'm like, and I'm not even intimidated, but it's just, I feel more pushed to be like really good at everything I do.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, if I'm with Marvin at his studio, his mark making is amazing. If I work with your brother, Kevin, he's also like kind of like fluid with it. My brother's really good at being emotional, Harold.
Yep.
He's really great at just like, kind of
letting it ooze out.
Letting it ooze out. And, I almost, and I get really emotionally involved.
Yeah.
So I think right now, I think of myself as an expressor. I do like to write. I do like to curate. I do like to do a bunch of, I would like to just maybe channel creativity in any way possible I can. If it's speaking, if it's dress, whatever it is.
Which is ultimately being an artist.
That is ultimately being an artist.
And I feel like too, it's sort of like all those things do help you develop your craft, right?
Yeah.
In whichever way you go. So it's like currently, like it doesn't have to be permanent. And you're not signing a contract as a painter or an artist.
Yeah. Oh my God.
But it's where you are right now in your journey, right? Like creating these like visual, amazing, beautiful pieces, like that also like evoke emotion. Do you, I guess, like, when do you think like having somebody see your art, were you able to recognize like, not like, oh, hey, I'm good at this, but also kind of like, hey, I'm good at this, like I should probably do this, like, do you remember those moments starting to happen?
Yes. So I was staying with my brother. And I was really confused. So like that 2019 summer, I really didn't know where I was going to, go next. I was staying by myself. My mom lived in South Africa at the time. I was really alone. And I was just like, what makes me happy? And I think that I just started making a few pieces. I remember like the apartment I stayed in, we had a carpet. And I remember just messing up my carpet. I'd painted on the door. And the first spurts were just like, this feels good. That's it. And then by the time my brother moved in with me, he was just like, I had a lot of commitment issues towards painting. And so I'd paint and then I'd be like, I'll be really judgmental about it. And I was like, oh, no. Like, this is just,
Yeah.
And Harold was able to kind of zone in and he was like, no. You're not shadowing, right? And so he kind of, he's a really great artist. So he's just like, no, you're going to shadow a little bit more.
Little direction.
And he's like, remember when I started like singing, I sucked at it. And he just kind of instilled a lot of, he helped me just own it a little bit better. And I remember my friends would come over and I would hide all my paintings. And he's just like kind of like, like flipping through. He's like, this one she made.
He was
amazing.
exposing you.
I love it. Yes, he was. He was exposing me. And it's like funny because I do like I am an expressive person, but I'm shy about.
But you're private. I'm about a lot of things. Yeah,
I love to be like my piece. So I think with a little bit of his help, I was making some things, and he would be like, "You did a good job of this." And as I was recognizing what I was doing, I think somewhere along the lines, I was just like, "Oh, this is my favorite piece," and then I would be like, "Harold," and I think I got a little bit
building
annoyed.
That confidence, right? It's
good.
Yeah,
I know this is good.
Yeah,
and it's just like, dude, I need like AM in the next day, please. And I'm like, I can't it. Yeah,
that's cool though, because it really is. I think like as you are an emerging artist, you really are. Would you say like 4 years, 3 years, 2 years in?
Yeah.
What would you consider like sort of like your start is like, okay, I'm kind of claiming this.
Probably like 2020.
2020. So you're a good like 2.5, 3 years in, right?
Yeah.
As like a new artist, right? Like building that confidence. There's key elements that are important, right? It's like, first off, having somebody around you who supports you, who sees you for who you are and sees your art for what it is, you know, is super important. So you feel good, right? You feel good with like this beginning, like process.
This beginning process is nice. I think that I want to get better at just maybe expressing more fluidly, because I'm around artists who do that. And I'm around artists who are really great at certain skills. So if anything, I just kind of ask your question again.
Well, you know, it's like, it's about building that confidence.
That confidence.
Also, like, I guess comparatively too can be hard for people. Like sometimes when you're around other artists, it almost like makes you be like, but you've kind of like, you've like fed off of it and like been able to find that balance.
Yeah. And I'm excited to get better, but I think I'm in a place where I feel like I want to just continue to learn skills. Like I want to work with a woodworker. I want to work with like I want to work with a bunch of people,
right?
And to see kind of what comes out.
Open it out. Open up the doors.
Because I remember when I started painting, it felt like I had a lot to express, and having paint was just enough, right? And then right about now, I'm like, I need a few more tools to express what I need to express.
Yeah.
You know, and as I'm getting a little bit more confidence, I want to be able like not to like, you know, like walk a painting out the door.
Right.
Or something dramatic like that. That's kind of where my brain's at.
Are there still pieces that you really like are not ready to show? Or do you feel like you're at a point where it's like when someone comes to your studio space, you're like completely open? Or do you still have pieces that you're like, I'm gonna keep this over here?
No. I'm like, I'm a lot more open with it. I've been working on that. One of my favorite little tidbits that kind of fell in my lap this week was when I was younger, I love dream. I like dream analyzing your dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I was younger, I would have these dreams and I was nude. And I would get so embarrassed in the dream, and I would, I would wake up and I'm like so ashamed. I'm like, why was I nude in my dream? And so I looked it up, and it's just like, if you're afraid of people experiencing you or seeing you, and you're ashamed of it in the dream, it means like, you're afraid of people.
Like being vulnerable.
So I remember like I would consciously think like if like the next time in my dream, I'm gonna be a little bit more confident if I happen to be in a scenario where I'm like, and so I think I've translated that to creativity of if I've made something, my creations are like a child that I have, and I owe it to them, even if I'm shy, even if I don't want to go to an art opening, I owe it to kind of, if somebody walks in, I'm like, oh, look at my baby.
I made that baby. Share it. Yeah. Well, I think too, it's like something to be said when they're in your space.
Yeah.
Opposed to being out. And I know firsthand because when we had asked you to show a couple of times and you were like, no, not ready. No. But you've sort of like definitely opened up in the last year and a half for sure.
Yeah.
You've had a show here at the Annex. You've got some pieces in a group show called Our Shadows Light. You participated in other group shows and you're showing at the Hygienic. Do you guys get like a solo show or a group show? How does that work for you?
So there's a group show, solo show. I've not signed up for a solo show because I still
not ready.
To grow. I still have to grow. I'm still shy. But I get a group show, I think, in July. And then I think I'm working with one of the ex-residents there. Forget her name now, but she does Fifth Dimension. What's her name?
Yeah. Juanita.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. She's an amazing curator and just like all of that. Yeah. That's great. So a solo show, you will eventually.
I want to do a solo.
So what does that look like for you? Like what would be like, I guess, your idea of like the perfect like setting, the perfect like ambiance, aesthetic, like how many pieces are you showing? Like what's your dream solo show?
Okay. I've been thinking about this. Firstly, I'll get Harold to perform.
Nice.
Maybe have a couple artists, or maybe not even perform, like practice or something. So I'd like to have some music.
Yep.
Maybe something practicey related.
Yep.
In maybe a semi-abandoned building of sorts, cleaned up a little bit, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd have as many pieces as I could have. I want, again, if I have bigger pieces, maybe something along the lines of that. If I could get to a place where I'm confident, maybe even painting a piece for that show at the show.
Oh, okay. Like live painting.
Live painting.
Have you done any live painting at all yet?
No, not yet.
Okay.
But I like the idea of it,
Yeah.
you know, as I see. And I think it's going to be really good for certain, like my ego and my growth to just like kind of be certain and sit there and be blown over.
We have a little stage outside of the Annex. So if you ever want to come and live paint here, you're more than welcome.
Sorry. It's not Karen. What did you say? No hablo inglés. Yes, okay, maybe later on.
Yourself, but if you ever want to, you know, when you're ready to like get that out, that is like definitely one of those things that's not necessarily for everybody. I feel like live painting is very polarized with artists because some artists are just like, yeah, I'm gonna go there, I'm gonna feel free. Katie Fowke being one that's like awesome, you know, Kern is they're just able to like be out there, you know, and then there are other Kevin as well. There are other artists I know that definitely are more like, yeah, no, that's not for me. I'm not going to do that. Or if they do it, it's a little bit of like a, it's not, it's a challenge, yes, you know, it's a challenge. But I do feel like as a young or as a emerging artist, it's for sure one of those things where at least you try, you know, it's like, at least you're like, all right, I'll just try this, see if it works.
And I have to try. I think I have to.
Yeah.
I'm a little competitive. Maybe shy, but I'm a little competitive. And it'll be nice. Like I've been watching some videos about performers, and I like the idea of performing.
Okay.
But it'd be really nice if I could get to a place where I was creating, then maybe I started crying. Or get into like
more of like a performative art performance.
Maybe getting myself to the places I get myself to in private on a stage and seeing like I'm not ashamed of, you know, going there or being that excited. Like I'm around, I know Alex being one of them, he's really passionate and he lets himself get passionate. It'll be really interesting to see how, could I yell?
Could you get there?
Could I get there?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful idea. Right? I've already like got a couple of spaces in mind. So it's interesting because like the way you talk about having what?
Then my phone's gonna be broken.
Yes. The way you talk about having a solo show is sort of like what I would like to do for a solo fashion show for myself. Yeah. It's very similar. It's like I do want it to just sort of like be all about me, but also kind of like have these other people involved. But like, like sort of like I'm not empty building, but like not abandoned, but like sort of like that structural, like it's like in the it's like on the cusp of like being industrial or being like in transition, you know, like creating a space like that and then somehow opening up that vulnerability. It's like for me personally, I'm like, I've thought about like narrating, like doing like voice, like, doing like some sort of like voice. So I totally understand your
with a raspy voice. I'd listen to that. Like, my fashion, y'all.
So what is like, do you have a time frame on like where you're headed? Like, are you kind of like, all right, I know you said you were like, oh, I'm not ready to do a solo show. Are you thinking like, all right, I'm going to try to do this within 5 years, 3 years, 2 years? You know what I mean? Like, have you set any, I guess, sort of like hard deadlines for yourself? Or are you still kind of just like, I'm going to just flow with it?
I think, you know, at least so far, creativity has been kind and it's kind of come to me. Yeah. And maybe like a full body yes moment for something like that.
Gotcha.
You know, like if it feels right. And then, you know, working through, sometimes it's like a nervous full body yes, but maybe a full body yes. Yeah. If something comes along, I know I have pieces that need to be shown. Yeah. Sort of something like that. Yeah. And then also making sure the people that I want to do it are also ready.
On board,
you know? Because I think when we're creating, we are getting influenced by people. So it's exciting because if it's like a painting, you don't get to see. It's not as dynamic as, you know, singers, actors, etc. But it would be nice to kind of have them ready. Or if they're not ready, maybe be in a similar kind of like, you know, hopefully it's like a crossing. Yeah. You know.
Yeah, and where it crosses and feeds off of each other and creates healing, creates, you know, like all that emergence of energy.
Maybe fashion show / arts.
Yeah.
Con Mrs. Fowke.
Yeah. Mrs.
Miss Fowke. I'm married to myself.
Nice. Mrs. Fowke. Mrs. Fowke. Cool. Cool.
Tell me more.
Now, let me ask you, do you have any sort of like hero artists or like people that maybe when you were young or maybe now, like is there anyone that has like really played a role like specifically as like, you know, visual artists?
I love Adebayo Bolaji. He's I believe Nigerian Ghana, British kind of artist. I like him. He went to law school, and he followed through his, parents are African. They're like, you're great. You're a great orator. You speak so well. Please go to, law school. So he went to law school. He worked as a lawyer for a few years, got sick, and he kind of felt like that was his way out of, he's just like, I'm miserable. I am a lawyer, but I'm miserable. And then he kind of found creativity. And I know he was an actor too. And he's like, he just performs. He has so many like creative niches.
Yeah.
He communicates his creativity so well. And as a person who's emerging, it's nice to hear some of the vocabulary of what I'm feeling or kind of the blockages I have.
Resonates with you.
Yeah. And it's kind of like a true story. I think you could be on a path very passionately, or you want to please people. I think I feel like sometimes I want to please like my mom or people around me.
Right, yeah.
And then sometimes I have to be true to myself. So I like that. And so all of his pieces are just bold, colorful. They're very energetic. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, I can for sure see some of those elements in your work. Absolutely.
He's my crush. He's my lover.
Let him know. We'll tag him.
Love him.
We'll tag him up. Yeah. What's the last like museum you've been to, or like big art show?
Okay, this is embarrassing, but I've not been to a museum.
You haven't?
No. I went to when I was in South Africa, I went to an apartheid museum, but that's kind of sad.
Yeah.
But I haven't.
Very sad.
Yeah.
but important,
And I haven't been around a lot of visual artists, so I have to initiate my first museum visits. I don't know where I want to go or how I'm going to work it out. Yeah. But I have to do that. Yeah.
Maybe like a day trip to New York City.
I want to do a day trip to New York City.
MoMA, PS1, Brooklyn Museum. Yeah. I mean, you could go to like the Metropolitan Art and all that stuff too. But, there's so many. There's so many out there. Yeah, that's cool. That's kind of cool that like also too, I feel like it's different when people don't have that museum experience.
It is different.
Because it's, I think it's one of those things where if you do it right, because it's overwhelming, and it is for sure like overstimulating being in any museum. But I think when you go with the intention of like, I'm here, I'm going to just like slowly take my time through the space. It's actually better, honestly, to go alone.
I think I would
or like with somebody that'll just be like, yeah, you go this way, I'll go this way. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because I feel like it's important to like really observe that.
Okay, so I technically did go to a museum when I was in Puerto Rico. Angel Boteo in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
But I don't know if that it does count. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
And I did get an opportunity to do a few laps.
Yeah. I think that's because it's a lot. I mean, there's so much art.
It's a lot.
When you look back, like, I don't know how much you've studied or learned about like the history of art history. Yeah. Is there any maybe artist or era that like throughout the history of all time like you feel like a little bit more like not like I feel like defines you, because I feel like ultimately we're all sort of like defined by like history and like our ancestors and everything, right? Is there any time that you're kind of like that might be me?
So the difficulty is I spent most of my life like Zimbabwe, South Africa. And so I would really like to connect to an artist of that area. But I do a lot of research on like African art. So I find a lot of West African art. And so I'm kind of still digging. So I know I love this artist, Lopez. She's a Mozambican German artist. So I really, really like her pieces. They're bold. They're also energetic. And they're themed around Mozambique. And I remember growing up, with my mom's family moving from Mozambique during the war. So I'd really like to find a East African artist, if anybody can kind of suggest something like that. Okay. I refuse to claim any other nationality. Yeah. And so I'm on strike until I can find a really awesome East African inspired art situation.
That must be like, I mean, your experience obviously growing up and being like, of course, sort of like into this version of American, this version of like African. It's like your worlds are definitely different. Yeah. What has been like probably like the biggest struggle culturally for you?
I think I grew up a little sheltered. And so I don't think I got to fully experience maybe the Zimbabwean South African side of things and of a person of color being in my body, et cetera. Because I was around my mom and my brother most of the time. And if I was around family, they were super sweet. And so I think culturally it's been like right now I'm teaching myself a lot of that. I'm reading books on apartheid, also getting to know what being Black in America is about. So
yeah, totally
you know what I
different
mean?
experience from
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And then creating and then making sure that I'm not creating from the influence of what I think being Zimbabwean is, or necessarily having the influence of South Africa, and trying to make sure in every moment I'm challenging myself to maybe the uncertainty that I'm at and expressing through that. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, it's like, it's kind of beautiful because ultimately you're going to have to forge your own path and you're painting a path for somebody else, right?
Yes.
So it's like, because you probably don't have that many other people who have had that experience. It's like, this is your experience. So it's great. It's like, it sounds like you're really like trying to incorporate them, but also too, it's like, you're like, you know, you're like moving the leaves out of the way, which is a beautiful thing.
And I feel like there's like probably like a battle with like my American and African ancestors, and I'm like trying to be a mediator and like create from the most kind of like fair perspective. Like if I'm being too African, I'll feel like a little bad, but I love my African side. And
it's hard. But I'm sure like melting those together. I want to be like, but you're both, right?
I'm both, and I love like African art probably a lot more than.
I recently saw this documentary on HBO and they were talking to kids that were biracial.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest things that one of the little kids said was like, you know, like, I don't know, it's like, my mom is this, my mom is that. But they were like, yeah, I'm 100% this and I'm 100% that.
Yes.
And to me, that was like one of those really defining moments because I feel like, yeah, why do we say half? Like, that's not true, right?
Yeah.
Like, yes, like, I guess if you want to divide up DNA, but ultimately, like, you're, you know, 100% of you is made up of both of these cultures, right? So I know it sounds weird to say, but it was like the way they said it was like, that's actually really great because it's like, you have the right to claim both of those things. You are those things. And ultimately, you're also this other unique experience in itself, right?
Yes. And I think I want to find great vocabulary to describe that. I feel that because I do feel like 100% Zimbabwean. And then I do feel 100% American. Yeah. I'm getting a little bit more confident. But Tay Selassie, she's this great Nigerian orator or speaker. I keep saying orator. But she talks about locality. And so she grew up in, I believe, Accra. And then she moved to New York, maybe Brooklyn. And then she lived in the UK. When she speaks about, instead of asking people where they're from, you ask them where they've been local to. Yeah. You could ask them better questions. Yeah. And so I feel like I'm local to like Mutoko, you know, Harare, Marondera, Johannesburg, Cape Town, and now New London. Right? Yeah. You know, so so it's kind of like, I think maybe as a generation too, because we're getting all mixed up. Yep. Because you're Colombian, right? I am. Yeah. I'm Colombian and my dad is. So that's funny you say that because now I've started saying I'm Brooklyn Irish because ultimately, and honestly, it's like, and I had this epiphany with my siblings recently where it's like, if there's anything I am, I'm a New Yorker. Like, you know, my dad's family was in New York for like generations in Brooklyn. And my mom's family was in New York for, you know, pretty much all of my life. My mom was born in Colombia and my parents met in New Jersey, but like my love for New York too and living there, it's like, you know, if I want to claim anything, I'm a New Yorker. I'm going to go ahead and claim that because it's so complicated to claim.
It is hard. It is hard. But at the same time, like you're saying, that locality, it's like, that's really, it's regional, right? It's like really, if we were to focus more on like region in America, it would, because other places do. Yeah. But I think specifically in America, we don't focus on region. It's like ultimately we're like New Londonites currently, right? Or like Connecticutans. Yes. Yes. Although I don't really like feel that connected.
I do know you can.
I don't feel like connected to Connecticut. There's something there for that. But the ocean, the sounds, you know, I feel connected to the sound,
I think, you know. The great thing about if you ask somebody where they're local to, you can still be embarrassed about.
Right. Yeah.
We have New York and we have Massachusetts. And we have kind of really close states. And we're like a young sibling.
And that's the thing too, is like we're New Englanders, but really we're tri-state. So it's a whole different like.
Sounds like denial.
You know what it is? I think it's just like, it's just pointing out how like much of an identity crisis, you know, a lot of us are happening, you know? Actually, it's funny because like one of the the ideas that I had, and me and Kevin talk a lot about this too. I would love to do a show that's really just about the American identity. And I was talking to about having him and having you involved, and like a couple other people that I know have had like this kind of unique experience where their parents are from different places, and like just sort of, and then sort of trying to redefine our American experience.
I feel bad too for the people. Like if you were born here, right? You didn't
I was
really
born in Charleston, South Carolina. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel bad for the people who have to identify with that ethnic side of them let me word that better. I think it's a little bit
like saying African American, or about like saying Asian American, instead of just being like, you were born here,
like
you're
your
American.
Mom's from some
Colombia,
country, and you don't have that same locality experience.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's kind of like it's a gray area where I'm like, versus like I could say I'm from Zimbabwe American. I have less of like a story to tell, and you have to be like, oh yeah, but I wasn't really, you get what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. It's interesting because I feel like you have more of a story to tell.
I do have more of a story to tell, but it's easier, you don't have to be like, I feel like we
say first generation. A lot of times in America, they'll say first generation. So like first generation Colombian. And, whatever. But yeah, like if you have children here in the United States, they'll be first generation. I don't know all the other things. So I was like, it's too much. Let's just let it go. But bringing it back to locality. We are in New London, Connecticut, sort of our little hub of artist love here. What sort of role has New London played for you? What has it meant for you? Because when you moved here, you moved to Waterford, right? But you were still obviously like, New London County.
New London. I spent most of my time in Niantic. Within the last year, I've been connected to New London and its little kind of hub of artists, and I really, really, I love it. It's rare that I don't meet somebody who's creative, and if they're not creative, I'm like, you're creative, and someone will be like the way you walk is creative, like you can't escape the creativity or something. It's just New London is so creative. You turn around. I work at Flavors of Life right now, and being in that store, it's like being in an international museum of of like items.
Very fitting for you.
It's very fitting for me. I love it. It's so fitting. But what was that? Where was?
So just like about how New London has kind of connected you and what it's meant for you.
So I think Jenny invited me to do one of my first shows at the First Up Gallery. And I remember I think the community is so comforting, and they're all very interested in each other's creativity. And we all investigate, like I kind of follow along the artists that I like, from your partner, Jenny, and Bug. All these, I think we all communicate. I don't know if I'm
absolutely.
But I think New London has helped me probably communicate my creativity and also learning what niche I'm in. Because I also, I get to gallery sit over at the Hygienic and being that community, and kind of I'm learning that within creativity, there's many, besides being a creator, there's many aspects of creativity that exist in the creative store or economy. Or
creative one more time, I do.
creative. But some people are really good sellers. Like they're artists, but they're sellers. Like you advertise people very, very well. I like to just be like, oh, I know this. Do this. 1 + 1 is 2.
Oh, you do an awesome job. I mean, a lot of people we get in our store will be like, oh yeah, Rebecca told me, Flavors of Life, and we kind of do the same thing too. We'll be like, oh yeah, go see Rebecca, Flavors of Life, and that's so really like it's kind of define like your community in a sense, right?
Yes.
Like you feel like connected
and
you've
helping
been able to network and
exactly, and then define what kind of role I wanna, how am I going to sustain myself as a creative, right?
Right.
How I want to work with people, what kind of people I want to work with. I get to work with Alex a lot, and I know I like to work with passionate people. When I'm around them, I'm charged. I'm excited.
Right.
I want to I get maybe I get a little bullshitty. Am I allowed to curse? And I'm just like, I want to do this. And he's just like, no. Like, he's like, you're slacking. Or, I like passionate people who are like, no, bullshit. They kind of, make you kind of take yourself seriously.
Yeah. Well, I think the greatest thing too, as you are like sort of like coming onto the scene more or less, is it does feel like you've been really open and perceptive to like not just listening, but also like you've done an excellent job of like advocating for yourself. And like, even just the fact that like, you're like, yeah, I'm not ready to show this way, but I'll do it this way. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I'm not ready for like a full on solo, but like, I'll start to dibble dabble, put a few pieces. And I think that helps just like with everybody too, being able to sort of see you as an artist and see like how that, you know, like how that has helped you and helps everybody else too. Cause I think the greatest thing for us as like, you know, within our own Annex community, then also within the New London arts community is learning from each other. Like that is super huge, you know, like we all kind of like receive and like, oh, cool, they're doing it that way. You know, it's like not a competitive situation. Everybody is really cheering each other on.
Helped, cheered on. Also, I feel like there's a lot of people you could ask about things, and you could, you know, watching you or other creatives and how they handle being a creative and still needing to sustain themselves. That's been really fun.
Yeah.
You know, and also I think everybody around your dresses fun, and it's kind of, you know, you get to see real creatives being creatives and what that looks like on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's been very
nice. The value of self-expression in New London is really, important.
And it's, you know, on a conscious level of like, oh, people have really
and accepted, you know, definitely.
And helped doing the partnership with Marvin has been, it was really nice because even working with him, he's like an amazing painter. He expresses himself so easy. If you ask him to draw an apple, he's just like kind of like da. Yeah, that's how you did it. But like he's very patient. Like if I show up to the studio, I can talk to him about anything. I can sit there for hours and he'll help me. Like, you know, we'll paint side by side. Yeah. You know, I can have and it's just not him alone. Over the gallery, all across. I feel like all the creatives, if I needed to have a conversation or I needed advice with something, or if I wanted to partner up. Yeah. Or if I needed an art lesson, I could reach out to somebody and somebody would help me. Or I could, you know, be a soundboard to somebody else's creativity, which is very, very exciting.
Yeah. And that's actually great because that puts us on to our next question, which is like, now that you are this super experienced artist.
Oh my God.
do you see yourself being able to be in that role? Like being able to be the teacher?
Teacher?
Yeah, like be sort of like more on the other side, right? It's like with everything you've learned, you feel like you can kind of like also give that back.
I would like, I don't know. So I like to cheer people on. I would like to curate. So maybe if I was cheering people on and connecting people to the people, because it's a lot of responsibility to teach somebody. I need like a few more years to like kind of, teaching somebody something would be, I could not imagine being like, yeah, it's just oil, it doesn't matter. You know, because like I now know that like
you know all the certain things,
you know, and I'm comfortable not following like a mold of something. Yeah. But I would want somebody else to do it like amazingly. So then I'd have to like,
So how about this? Let's make it easier for you. You don't have to teach anybody today. There's no one, I'm not bringing anybody out. You don't have to give them a lesson. But what about, you know, I'm sure you do have good advice to offer, right? So what would be like, you know, a couple of things like that you would advise like someone that's sort of like, oh, I want to express this part of me. You know, like what would your direct advice be to them?
Maybe, do you want to do it long-term, short-term? How are you going to sustain yourself? Can you approach it from like a child perspective, which means having no expectation, right? And then can you have expectation, play around with all like the emotion wheel of expressing? Could you do that? So that's kind of maybe the biggest piece of advice. And also finding people who express or communicate expressively in the genre you want to communicate in. Find a kind of like an idol or somebody who does it well, and then try to do it in your way, but kind of in the world of that artist. And then maybe jump around with a few artists that you like and kind of, you know, you kind of do something like that. I would recommend. And then finding yourself in a few different worlds and then kind of seeing what sticks, what doesn't stick.
That's great advice.
That's a great place.
That's really great advice.
But how do you sustain yourself? Yeah. You know, I feel like people... There's so many creative careers that I'm learning about. Mm-hmm. If you know you want to be creative, be confident about it, and then find a way to sustain yourself so your daily life is creative too, right? And don't limit creativity to necessarily working galleries or, you know, kind of like these kind of molds. You know, start expressing yourself creatively with maybe how you manage your space, your home, the way you dress, the way you talk, et cetera, and get comfortable with that as you find and don't limit yourself, I think, too. If you feel like you want to do something, just do it, even if you do it badly, and have fun while you're doing it badly.
I love that advice. That's great. That's perfect. That's perfect. What do you love about the Annex?
What do I love about the Annex?
No, I guess, yeah, you've helped us out. You've gallery sat for us, or not gallery sat, Annex sat. You've Annex sat. We're in, what's called, we're undefined. But you've been here with us through shows and exhibits and, helped us out. Do you feel like, what do you feel like you've kind of gotten out of your Annex experience?
I've had my first shows here. I've kind of gotten out of my shell. You guys have helped me. I can get more confident and have a place to be confident as I kind of express myself. And I like that, when I get to be in this space, I get to be creative and I get to be around creative people. I think I was like dancing the other day. Your brother was drumming. Our locals were in, and I was getting to chat, etc. I know I had, while the Right Path was open, I had his daughter over and the two of us would kind of sit and we would paint together. Yeah, it's kind of it's a safe, creative, like womb or belly of sorts, You come here, you get nurtured. If I wanted to have a show, I could have a show here. If I wanted to send people who are kind of, trying to figure out how they want to be creative, go to this store. There's tons of creative people, different genres, even musicians, all the way to clothing makers, to earrings, to whatever it is. Go to the store, see how other people are doing it. I can send people over here for inspiration. And I get to send people over here for inspiration. Like that alone, getting to send people here for inspiration is really nice.
Yeah, I think it's cool too, because it's also like, what we offer is not just like one sole like person. It's like there's so many different artists. We kind of reflect our community in a lot of ways, which is really great. So I appreciate that.
And you guys are very knowledgeable and you have a lot of experience.
And we're still learning. And we're still learning.
Yes. It's nice. When I was watching Krista and Denny's podcast, I was, listening to that and I was like, these guys are like amazing. And they're nervous on the podcast.
So nervous.
You guys, because we're almost everywhere.
Yeah.
You see any of Denny's works, they're like so effortless and like the marks are amazing. The composition's amazing. So it's nice to get to see the human side of amazing creatives.
Yeah. I think, for the most part, we're all pretty humble. We try to stay humble, and
I hope I'm not humble as an artist. I hope I get more cocky. I'm channeling Kanye West.
Yeah, well, it's like that balance. You need that, right? You need a little bit more cockiness, a little bit at times. I think that's what's important, is like knowing when to like use that part of you. Whatever you want to do, we support you. And actually, speaking to that, what do you think? Like you're talking about sustainability. What would define that for you? Like, do you feel like that you're able to achieve that now, or what would like be like the ultimate like definition of like you being a sustainable creative?
I think a lot of my work, when I was in Zimbabwe and my transition over, like when I stayed in Cape Town, my brother and I grew up around people who make their own toys. You have kids with like wires turning them into like these moving, amazing, intricate cars. So I think I've built my creativity on this is what I have and this is kind of what I can work with. And so I think my work is pretty sustainable. And I hope to kind of keep, like if I find an interesting piece of material, it's a lot more exciting than a blank piece of canvas.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah, I think so.
I'm a sustainable artist.
You are. I mean, I think, it's like that cross between like taking something that's like unusable to most people and turning it into being completely usable, or there is like a lot of like untethered beauty in that, and so really it's like, in a sense, that's your beginning. First you start off as like you're curating, right? So it's like you're curating things together, and then you're sort of like elevating them to like be yours, like then you're able to claim them. You start off of like, okay, these are these found things. This is and now how am I going to put this together and sort of like define it as my own like expression? Yeah.
And I found like one of my favorite pieces hangs over at Tara and Alex's place. And it's this lovely kind of shooting board. And it's this piece of wood. And I kind of went over with patterns that the actual canvases didn't cost anything, but I was able to kind of like work with that and see what wanted to come out. And I saw a big chest. I saw like a dude just owning himself. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I got, you know. And then, you know, with a few of the canvas pieces, it's, you know, seeing painters and people building homes work. I'm like, hey, are you guys using this canvas? Can I get it? When you're done with it, don't throw it away.
Yeah.
You know, so yes.
I feel like too, there's probably a lot of art supplies out there that can easily be like, you know, recycled and sort of like you reused or brought back to life.
Absolutely.
Do you
keep paint? I think I could still use that.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference in as far as like oil, acrylic, or like any like is there anything that you're more like, yeah, I would love to like do that way more?
I've been learning what oil means. And so I think I really, really like oil. I like the buttery feel. I worked with pastels. I really love pastels. I like acrylic. It dries a lot faster.
Right.
I think my preference is probably oil. I like to mix things because
the chemistry of it.
The chemistry. Yeah. If I'm getting frustrated, if I feel like I'm just speaking from one end and I want to kind of speak in a different way. And I like how kind of fun and confusing, and sometimes, you know, if I work with like gouache or watercolor, I can't get a piece wet.
Right.
Like, you know, like that defines like a big part of it.
And then also too, it's like time.
And time.
So it's like your time, you know, the clock starts when you start using acrylic, or you start, you know, even like pastels. I feel like when you start using certain things, it's like, okay, this is the clock.
Boom. And it's
with oil, it's like, you know, you can kind of go back and wake it up. I mean, you could wake up acrylic too, I guess. Acrylic. Some water, I guess.
But like,
I don't know.
Imagine oil being like sculpting.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it makes fun sounds, and as you drag it across, it's like lotion on
Have you done any sculpture work at all?
I want to do sculpture.
So that's on the roster.
That's on the roster.
Yeah. So another question, and actually I'll start off with a little funny tidbit that I think you'll appreciate. So we are looking at a piece here of this amazing figure being female, who is sort of in this position that it's almost as if she's like a little locked up. She looks tired. So Sante was here the other day, and he was asking about the piece. Kevin thought he was asking about one of his pieces.
Of course.
So he was like, Kevin was like, oh yeah, it's sort of like a self-portrait. And so Sante started burst out laughing because he thought it was like a self-portrait of Kevin when he was looking at this piece. So, but you know, what do you think your like inspiration comes from? I mean, I don't know that is this a self-portrait, or like is like a lot of times when you have figures or beings, a lot of people do assume that it's sort of like some sort of extension of yourself. So where does that sort of inspiration come from? I know you have like linear, you have patterns, you know, they're definitely like bold colors, you know, come through, but is like, where does that come from for you? How do you kind of get to those points?
They are extensions. I like that. I like that you said that. I think when I started creating, it was like I had to express something, so I expressed it, and I kind of created a totem or a sculpture of what was happening on my internal in the internal of me. So yes, all of it, I think I can't escape that it comes from me, and it probably comes from somewhere. Maybe some of it I am exaggerating so I can kind of get a feeling or live it out a little bit more. Like I'm not really like angry person, but if I have a piece like this, I was working with just sexual trauma and trying to liberate myself from that. So I put myself in the most vulnerable place I could for the sketch of it. And I stared at this forever, and I was like, I had to think of what I wanted to be, like how I wanted to be viewed as I think, you know, if you're a girl in society, of course, or a female, or you identify with, I think certain, you know, if you come across feminine, I think there's a natural seduction kind of play at it, and natural like prey, and, you know, people want to come and they are attracted to. Yeah. And so I think with this piece, I was specifically thinking of, in what ways was I okay with being viewed in that way, and which ways I wasn't, and kind of letting it all kind of mesh and letting that conversation happen within me. Yeah. And how I wanted to communicate myself as a sexual being. Right.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful. I know like this specific piece. Can you tell me the name of it again? I don't have it up there.
Saccharin.
This is like been major when people come in. Like for sure, people look at it and they're, they feel something. Like there's like emotions that go on and come out. And I think specifically with like the female body or feminine, like nudity, it for sure is exactly like, I don't know, it's like historically just what it means and represents. I think it can go, it's like either going to sexuality or sex, and then it's like abuse, right? So like a lot of times that is like a big part of like, at least like how we see it, because we know, or like if you've experienced it or about it, it's like immediately like, and I feel like sometimes pieces can kind of, you have other pieces that sort of bring out more of like the positivity in that.
Yes.
So for sure, I feel like it's very legible, you can see it through your work. It comes out. It's like, okay, this is more of like that positive, like powerful
side of it. Yeah.
Side of it. And then this is more like that, like vulnerable feeling.
Yeah. And when you're, a lot of my pieces, I do try like, there's normally a buildup of something I'm trying to not maybe communicate. And if I'm frustrated enough, if I'm frustrated with maybe the negative side of it, or, the super duper positive side of it, it does kind of come out, and it's a nice conversation, because then I'll listen to like a podcast, or, I had a friend who was very, very, sexual, and she expressed herself sexually, and she was very happy she was expressing herself sexually. And I'm probably a little bit more private, and I know, and I come from like an African household. A lot of people, even if they're the most sexual ladies, they're very reserved about it. But I found myself kind of having conversations with who creates even the narrative of how acceptable it is. How, who was I to kind of even maybe like define what was okay for her, or her experiences.
Right.
Maybe her version of dealing with her trauma was that, or not even, it wasn't even, maybe she just feels comfortable with it, right? There's many aspects to every topic. And I know sex and sexuality and all of that is kind of maybe a little bit more taboo. But I think, there's a series of these where it was kind of this phase, and then there was like a celibate piece, and then there was like a liberated piece.
Yeah.
I was, how do I say that? I had to kind of have those hard conversations and really face maybe not so, like the shadow thoughts I had about, sexuality. And a lot of the thoughts, like I have a piece that I worked on too with groupthink. And there was this, controversy happening in my community. And I was like, in what ways am I submitting? In what ways am I group thinking? And the piece is just like these three ladies coming together to form this opinion. I'm like, in what ways is this good? In what ways is this bad? But I think it just gives me a platform if I have like a totem, or if I have this figure and I kind of just throw everything into it. I kind of experience and I process.
Yeah. So it is definitely like things just coming through, working through it in your own experiences. And then also, you had mentioned earlier with like that wood piece, you kind of just saw the being inside of it.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's like more personal, and it is like this therapeutic experience. And other times it's more like what you see,
what I see
in that object, or in, that surface.
And
speak to you.
Yeah. And like thinking about like, if I were, the conversation I've been having with myself lately is, if I were to represent East Africa, what kind of piece would that look like, right? And so I kind of will start off somewhere like that. And then I'll kind of, then I go into like, what does that mean? And then, I kind of ask myself questions, and I quiz myself, and I ask myself, in the conversation I'm having with my piece and with myself, am I knowledgeable? Do I, and I get to learn a lot of things while I'm working on a piece, because, I'm trying to make sure that I'm expressing myself with maybe the most clear, like the most truth I could possibly speak.
Right.
Being very transparent, being very vulnerable, and being very even ashamed, and kind of like being okay with the fact that I could get to a place where I'm going to, kind of express something that may make me even uncomfortable.
Right. And then, so now that it's hanging here, and you're obviously comfortable talking about it, and there's other pieces. Do you like, I know you said it earlier, like, oh, my babies, like, I think that's really awesome, because I feel that way too about even the clothes I make, like, letting them go and like seeing them on other people is like definitely I value that part of the experience. do you feel like it's also sort of like been a healthy like release for you? Like, okay, like this is here, like once it sells, like the pieces that have sold,
Yeah.
right? It's like they're always with you, right? And plus you're sort of at the beginning of your selling art journey. So you kind of know right now where everything is.
I know where everything is. And I'm very excited to know. And I like to visit where things are. No shame.
Yeah. But like letting go.
So I think with like this piece, I probably sat with it for like a year because I wasn't ready. And I'd expressed like something that I like kind of was maybe holding on to a little tightly.
Yep.
And so when I kind of released it, I was just like, that doesn't define me.
Yeah.
Nor can it. It's interesting. So by the time I have something like this up, I will say that I'm kind of in acceptance, and I have no shame in keeping a piece in my place, and just it's for me.
Yeah.
For now, and then when I'm ready for everyone else to have it, but I want to live with it. I've had that idea probably for like a month or two.
Right.
And by the time I give birth to it, I want to like breastfeed. I'm gonna get really.
You want to nurture it.
I want to see it. I want to see kind of like in my world, where does that piece belong?
Yeah.
And then there's some pieces that are easier that I've expressed something. And even if it's deep or heavy, I'm like, I'm done with it. You could
let it go. Now, because I have like, obviously like this major, like branding, merchandising business mind, I'm like, that would be also a beautiful poster.
Yeah.
Have you sort of like transitioned any of your work into like a different phase of like life as far as like posters, stickers, or postcards or anything like that?
Due to a lot of passionate banter and chat by Alex, I have actually ordered my first stickers.
Yeah.
And then I'll hopefully have I think the conversation I'm having is there's certain pieces that are lighter, like, the angels.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Spring Angel. The Spring Angel piece, that's something that I feel like is maybe lighter on a sticker.
Yep.
There's some pieces like this, I don't know if I would want it necessarily on.
Yeah.
So it depends on like I guess the feeling I have with the piece and what I would want on a sticker. But I would like to have a good balance of maybe a stream of income. Not a getting myself and my creativity.
Sold here at the Annex.
Sold at the Annex.
Yeah, I think it's not for everybody, and I think that's like important for artists to always understand too. It's like you don't have to do that, but at the same time, it's also can be really nice because sort of like digitizing your work in that way and like seeing it transition gives it a new definition too. So it's like you're saying, like some pieces will like that works and that'll be like, yeah, this is like vibrant, it grabs, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's cool. So that's your sort of like something you're working on right now, experimenting with that.
And I found and this is also expressed to me that not everybody will be able to afford a piece that is even if it's like $300.
Yeah.
But they could support me with a sticker.
With a sticker or print. Yeah.
Maybe they don't have the space.
Yeah.
And
right. Or if they're moving, they're not settled somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And you could carry me around.
Do you have a website?
So my website hopefully will be out by the time this airs. So it's going to be www.pigslovemangos and mangoes with an E.com.
All right, so go ahead and tell us, what is Pigs Love Mangoes?
Pigs Love Mangoes was it was this kind of blog I started. It was Capture Yellow, and I would post just yellow stuff. And that was kind of when I was I was getting kind of comfortable expressing myself and having a gallery of things to look at. And so Pigs was the idea was mangoes. I love mangoes. I have really great memories around mangoes. I remember staining like white teas with mangoes, and I have all these great African stories with mangoes. But the idea was that pigs are kind of viewed like dirty and nasty. That anything could love anything.
Right.
Anything could love anything.
Yeah.
And you could just insert that. And I think I like the imagery. I like when kind of you hear something that kind of like just makes you kind of like stop and think. Yeah. And maybe you're a little like puzzled, like why would you even?
Right.
And it's kind of catchy. like a great story.
Yeah.
If you're reading a really great story, if there's a part that just doesn't make sense, you kind of stop and you're thinking like, why would the person kind of?
Rebecca Fowke, Pigs Loves Mangoes.
Like, why would you even refer to yourself?
Out now. Yeah. Available now.
Bum, bum, bum.
Bum, bum, bum. That wasn't the right bum, bum, bum for that moment, but I went with it anyway.
I think your voice makes a lot of things sound really good.
Thanks.
I'm like, yeah. Bum, bum, bum.
You are a good cheerleader. You're hired. I know. I think one time I had told you, I was like, can I just like bring you around everywhere with me? Because you're just like, every time I see you, you make me feel so good about myself.
I love people.
It's an awesome trait.
You're so good at being yourself.
I think we covered it. I think we got it all. Let's check with the producer. Yep. He says we got it all. Yes. So we're going to have to do this again in a year.
I would love to do it in a
Once
year.
a year, Rebecca Fowke.
Gives you an update.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. You're wonderful. And we are so happy to be a part of your journey. I think, just like a resounding like clap for you from everybody in the Annex community, at least, is like, oh yeah, like they're starting to see your work and like really super happy to like have you showcasing and sort of like watch your journey. It's awesome. And I think it's really cool when, you're going through this experience of like listening to other artists who have been through a little bit more and, kind of like seeing you kind of take those things and, you're like, okay, cool. Yeah, I can try that. I can do this. Or we're here for you. We're all here for you.
And thanks for having me.
Yeah.
And thanks for being a beautiful creative.
I try. But, I think it's like, we're all on that path of like learning our craft and continuing to perfect it. And like where I was 10 years ago to where I am now definitely like feels different, but I'm still, I still have insecurities. I still have like all of that, but I think it's like one of those things, like you said, it's like being able to keep it in a safe space, but also like pushing the boundary. Yeah, letting that boundary happen. Yeah, yes.
And it's nice to hear like when I hear you speak about what you're making, I do feel like you're continually like meeting yourself.
Oh yeah.
And your creative side, and you're challenging yourself, and that's nice to hear as a creative, because sometimes I think you can get trapped feeling like you have to define yourself.
Right.
But you kind of, I think, creatively die, and you get reborn, and you kind of go through that beautiful cycle. And hearing creatives who are developed communicate that is just beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's periods of, you get stagnant, or you can get stuck or blocked or bored even, or repetitive things get redundant. But, it's just like.
And those are catalysts towards that. You get bored, and
you got to accept that and kind of like figure out, okay, where's the light shining? Like, where can I, find the light in the dark type.
And take a break
thing.
Sometimes. Like, during the board period, I don't have a responsibility. Right. Nothing wants to be communicated.
There was that meme that came out the other day that I just saw, that I just been like reposting. It was like, artists need a day to like just sit and do nothing or whatever. I forget where I saw it, but that's true.
That's true. Because sometimes you're just like, I have to express. Because sometimes when you're bored, you're kind of like, you're concerned. Like, like I do get concerned a little bit. Like sometimes I'm like, have I expressed everything that I'm like ever am gonna express? And then sometimes I'm bored and I'm like, thank God I don't have to like sit, like, sit. And like my back ends up hurting. I'm like, oh, thank God I get a break. There's nothing that needs to be said. I get to just like,
chill out,
appreciate what I've made so far.
Well, the space between that is really important. It's really important to step back and breathe.
Yeah.